welcome back to this series of videos dedicated to the great Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto. This is the fourth canto that we're going to read today, and looking at the project, I think these videos are probably going to be shorter and shorter as we proceed, because first of all, Ariosto is writing in a very fluid, very flowing way. In the first videos, I spent some more time on the background, on the biography of Ariosto, and especially on all the references back to the previous work, which is Orlando Innamorato by Matteo Boiardo. And as the narration progresses in Canto 4, 5, and 6, the references are going to be repeating themselves, and they're not going to be as obscure to understand if we haven't read the Orlando Innamorato. So that's another reason why I think we're going to be a little bit speedier. But I'm going to start this video as well with a little portion, as I discussed in the previous ones, from Italo Calvino's introduction to the Italian version of Orlando Furioso. So Calvino is speaking particularly about the war and the relationship between the myth and the history. And we know that there is a blur in not only in Orlando Furioso, but in all this type of tradition that developed even before Ariosto. It's interesting how Calvino says the time in which all these adventures, and not only in Orlando Furioso, but also the famous cantari or the public singers happened, is a kind of a concentrated of all times and all the wars. So it's not really completely real, especially all the wars between Islam and Christian Europe. And so there are many anachronisms. For example, this anachronism of the invasion of Spain by Charlemagne, which did not happen really. And the other one, even more important, the assault to Paris by the Muslim forces. So therefore, all these battles and wars become a pure narrative matter. That's what Calvino is saying. They become a symbol for some values and some kind of general ideas. Something that is not very well known outside of Italy is that this type of stories and representations continued on until our modern times. In fact, even today, we still have some popular theater in Naples, for example, that they are representing this type of stories. And even more famously, it's called the Teatro dei Pupi in Sicily, the theater of the pupi, or you can call it the puppets. It's so famous because you've probably seen it. I'm going to show a couple of images here. Also on the side of some traditional cart and chariots in Sicily. That's how long this type of repertoire of characters and battles and stories has lasted in time. A lot of Canto 4 is easily summarized in two main parts. The first part we have Bradamante going with Brunello, stealing the magic ring from Brunello in order to rescue Ruggero from the castle of Atlante or Atlas. She defeats Atlante, and she forces him to release everybody together with Ruggero, including the hippogriff, this magic horse, which is a mix between a horse and a griffin. This part of the plot ends with Ruggero riding on the hippogriff, not being able to control him, and probably because of something that is still controlled by Atlante, the hippogriff flying away with Ruggero on his back. He's a little point up in the sky. The second part of the plot of Canto 4 sees Rinaldo, who is now arrived in Scotland, finds a monastery and some monks. They tell him the dire situation of Genevieve or Ginevra. She is the daughter of the King of Scotland, and she's in a very terrible situation because she risks being put to death by the own laws of the country of Scotland because of an alleged adultery. So this is the plot of Canto 4 from a high level. and it moves so fast, and it's just so sparkling as always. I think where I can maybe be a little helpful is with the only couple of references to Orlando Innamorato that still are present here. Not as many as in the first three cantos, but here in particular, and I think this is crucial for the entire plot of Orlando, I'm looking at the stanza number 29. In stanza number 29, we have Atlas, who's speaking to Bradamante, and he's explaining to her basically his drive, his motivation for kidnapping Ruggiero and holding him as a prisoner in the castle. Atlas loves Ruggiero like a son, but even more than a son, because he's been with him since he was a child, since Ruggiero was a child. Ne per maligna intenzione hai lasso. I didn't have any bad intentions for Ruggiero. Ma per ritrar sol dall'estremo passo, un cavalier gentil mi mosse amore, love moved me. There are so many echoes of Dante, Inferno, Canto 5. I swear I'm going to stop talking about Dante after a couple of videos.
Wow.
Che, come il ciel mi mostra, in tempo breve, morir cristiano a tradimento deve. What's important here is that there is a prophecy that Atlas is aware of about Ruggiero. He knows that once Ruggiero converts to Christianity and once he is married, he will die very shortly thereafter, as per this prophecy. So he's trying to hold him back and to keep him from A, turning Christian, and B, getting married. In fact, in the next stanza, he says, Et io che l'amai sempre più che figlio, I've loved him even more than a son. Lo cerco trar di Francia e di periglio. I try to keep him away from France, from any type of danger. He's almost like an overprotective father, this Atlante for Ruggiero. Then we have at stanza 67 a beautiful reference to classical myths. In fact, Ariosto talks about Ganimede. Ciò che già inteso avea di Ganimede, ch'al ciel fu assunto dal paterno impero. In this stanza, Ariosto is referring to the myth of Ganymede. He was the son of the king of Troy, and he was abducted by Zeus, who wanted it for himself because he was so handsome. He wanted him for himself to serve him, basically. So he became a servant to Zeus. And there is a correlation that Ariosto makes between Ganymede and Ruggiero for this reason. I find it also interesting to note towards the end of this canto how Rinaldo is attacking verbally the laws of Caledonia, of Scotland, because they are very unfair towards women. So I wonder how much these comments from Rinaldo translate the thoughts or the real beliefs of Ariosto, who still obviously lived in a very male chauvinistic society, or how much they were there maybe only to please the damsels, whoever were the female listeners at the Ferrara court. Who knows? It's something else that Italo Calvino mentions about Ariosto is the fact that he, as the narrator, tends to always keep a little bit detached and hidden from the narration. He talks about everything and he touches on everything but himself in this poem. But I think it makes sense because the type of dynamic story that we are reading here is not really anything personal, and it shouldn't be. It's a labyrinth. It's a labyrinth, and I hope that you are enjoying it as much as I am as I read it or reread it in part. It's really such an entertainment machine, and it's a labyrinth. I think a labyrinth is a good image to call this type of narration because it would look like chaos, but it's not chaos. There is a glue that holds everything together despite the apparent messiness of the entire story. So I'm curious to know what you guys are thinking so far, if you're reading it now, 2nd of September of 2022, or now, which could be at some point in the future. So this is really a kind of a read along, but with no deadlines. You can read it at your own pace as I keep uploading these videos about it. So thank you again. Thank you for following and for watching these videos and for being interested in Ludovico Ariosto. Bye.